Welcome back. Now, we just learned about ability costs, and we also learned about cooldowns a little bit. We saw that in the gameplay ability, we have the ability to apply costs. We can also apply cooldowns as well. And notice that this applies a gameplay effect. And a cooldown gameplay effect is going to prevent us from being able to activate an ability until the cooldown time has elapsed. And in order to have a cooldown gameplay effect, we need a cooldown tag for it. So the first thing we're going to do to implement cooldown is I'm going to close all my tabs and open my Aura gameplay tags, and we're going to create a cooldown tag for our Firebolt ability. So I'm going to have this right here under my abilities tags. It's going to be just like abilities Firebolt, except it's going to be cooldown Firebolt. Let's go ahead and create that. So here's my Firebolt. I'm going to copy and paste it down here, and it's going to be cooldown Firebolt. And the F name will be changed to cooldown Firebolt, and its string will say Firebolt cooldown tag. And I'm going to have a multi-line comment to show that this is where we're going to have some cooldown tags. So I'm going to say cooldown here. And now we have a cooldown tag. Perfect. So let's implement cooldown for our Firebolt. I'm going to go ahead and launch. And with the editor open, we can create our cooldown gameplay ability. And I'm going to go into ability system or abilities Firebolt and create that gameplay effect here. So new blueprint class, gameplay effect. Choosing gameplay effect, we're going to create a new GE underscore cooldown underscore Firebolt. Now, how do cooldowns work? Well, we've seen that when we commit a cooldown, we're applying this gameplay effect to ourselves. Look at the code. I'm going to search for it again. I'll just go ahead and open gameplay ability and scroll up a bit because we have apply cooldown, right? And what does apply cooldown do? Well, we can go to it. We see that it applies a gameplay effect to owner. So what does this mean? Why is that going to prevent us from activating an ability? Well, it will work as a cooldown tag if we add a granted tag. And that granted tag has to be a cooldown tag. So if we add our new cooldown tag, cooldown.fire.firebolt, to the granted tags, then our ability system component will now have the cooldown tag. That is going to prevent the ability if and only if this cooldown effect is set as the cooldown effect for the ability. But that's not the only thing. These are durations, right? This is a cooldown with a duration, which means it can't be instant. It has to be a has duration, and it's also going to need a non-zero duration magnitude, right? For instance, we can put a 1 here, and of course, scalable floats, you already know they can have curve tables. I'm just going to have a 1 second duration. And then with that, we can open our GA Firebolt and scroll down to the bottom and give ourselves a cooldown gameplay effect class. That's going to be GE cooldown Firebolt. Now, if we're committing, and we are calling commit ability, which commits both cost and cooldown, if we're committing our cooldown gameplay effect, that means it's applied to the owner of this gameplay ability. And because this gameplay effect grants the cooldown tag, our owner of this ability is going to have the cooldown tag. And if it has the cooldown tag that is associated with the cooldown gameplay effect set here in the class defaults, then we won't be able to activate the ability until that cooldown tag is removed. So now we don't need this delay hack. We're going to remove that delay from the ability, and after spawning the projectile, we can end the ability immediately. And we don't have to worry about being able to spam it. We'll have to wait a full second before we can activate it again. Let's test that out. and I'm spamming the left mouse button, and I can only fire once every second. And then when I run out of mana, I can't fire at all. Now, 1 second is too long. I just wanted that to be a sort of demonstration time, but 0.5 is probably a little bit better. We don't want our weakest ability to be over nerfed. We don't want it to be too weak to be used, as early on in the game, things should be quite easy. So half a second, pretty good delay. So that's all great, that's all fine, but really all we perceive is that delay physically as we're trying to activate the ability again. We can click, 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 and only activate it once every second, but we get no visual feedback as far as the duration of that cooldown. Usually RPGs have visual feedback showing you how much of that cooldown time has elapsed. And typically that's down somewhere where we have our ability icons, right? So I have my left mouse button ability icon here. It'd be nice if we can see the cooldown time remaining. And we could have this grayed out so we know we can't activate this ability until the cooldown has elapsed, and we can then cast it again. So in the videos to come, that is going to be our goal, to implement a cooldown timer that shows us visual feedback for those cooldowns. So excellent job, and if you feel like it, go ahead and make yourself a curve table for the cooldowns if you want the cooldown duration to change with the level of our ability. I don't. I want the cooldown to be a 0.5 constant rate for my Firebolt ability, but that's just me. Now, one last detail you might have noticed while testing before we wrap up this video is now that we've removed that delay before ending our ability, you'll notice that our montage is cut short. And that can easily be fixed if we go into our Firebolt ability and uncheck this checkbox from Play Montage and Wait, stop when ability ends. If we uncheck that, then our montage will continue playing even past when our ability ends, as we're ending it quite early. So if we press play, now we'll see that we get that full montage. And of course, if we activate the ability, we're playing that montage again. So if it's still finishing up, we'll start that montage all over again, and that's the sort of behavior that I'd like. Now, this is all fine and good, except if we change this to a multiplayer game with 2 players. Let's see what happens on a client. Notice we're not getting our projectile spawned. Now, this has to do with ending the ability. If we end the ability this soon, then what's happening here in the pie is that ability is ended instantly on the client before the projectile can even really be spawned. So to prevent that, we don't have to end the ability as soon as we spawn the projectile, but rather we could tie this to ending the ability once the montage is complete. In fact, we could end the ability really anytime, a good deal after the spawn projectile function is called. So we could hook up all of these, including blend out, interrupted, canceled. We'll end the ability for any of these, and that's going to take care of allowing the client enough time to actually spawn that projectile. And of course, our server is also able to launch. So now things look good in multiplayer. Excellent job, and I'll see you in the next video.